Okay, wait for some people to get in here. It's been a minute. We had no power. This very hour. Man, I wonder if I get anyone in here if they even know I exist anymore. Because I haven't been doing anything. But man, oh man, we're going to wait just a little bit longer, at least until I see somebody come join us. Come on. Where you at? Anybody? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Okay, so how long have we been going here? Streaming a minute. Okay. We are going to start this thing off here in about 2 minutes for everyone out there. We are going to recap our first episode of Wagging the MoonDoggie. Finally got somebody watching over on the Tubester. Glad to have you, whoever you are, man. It's going to be a intimate night, not in a weird way. I have had no power, and that is why I have not been here. Arcadia Colt, how you doing, man? I'm glad you're here. We're going to have... It just might be me and you, bro. So, yeah. I haven't done anything in a while because we have had no power for close to a week. And so I've just been sitting around inside. But I had pre-recorded... you know what? Hang on a second here. Just hang on a second. Let's just get into this. Get that dumb music off and get my lovely face on the screen. There I am. Okay. So I had recorded and was going to upload a new Wagging the Moondog episode number 2, Moon Rocks. And after I recorded the whole damn thing, and it took like 45 minutes to do, I realized that the background music was too loud, so it kind of was distracting. So I didn't upload it. So I'm going to do it live tonight. And hopefully we get a few people in here. It'll be fun to do. If not, then it'll be on the replay machine. But to recap what we covered in episode number 1, I had re-recorded a new recap too. But again, that one kind of got all janked up because I'm on the wrong screen there. Got all janked up because again, the music was too loud. So what I thought I would do is just play a recap at higher speed. Let me get the speed going. We're going to do it at almost chipmunk speed. Maybe not. Maybe I'll go 1.5. We'll see how that comes out because I already talked pretty fast. We're going to do a recap of episode 1. Now this is the recap of episode 1 that I did back in 2019, but it was for episode 1. So the recap is going to be the same recap as this one. So we're going to play that. It should take about 5 minutes. I might make some funny commentary on our way through this, but we're going to recap what we covered on episode 1, and then we're going to jump directly into episode number 2. It's going to be a good time. I'm glad we got a few people. We got Tech Edwards. You're here. Sweet Rational Wrong Think, my bro. Glad you're here, man. Yeah, so here we go. Let's play it right now. Previously.
Welcome back, everybody, to SJG Perspective. This is a recap of episode number 1, Wagging the MoonDoggie. In episode number 1, we covered censorship on the moon landing hoaxers, meaning that every place you look, from YouTube to Google and everywhere in between, the first results you get when you search for moon landing hoax are going to be debunking sites that say anybody who believes in such a thing is a batshit crazy tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theory loony flat earther crazy person. They absolutely have implemented and done a damn good job of implementing the ridicule and mocking campaign of all hoaxers who call foul on the information about the moon landing. We covered that. We also covered the whole cognitive dissonance of the moon landing being fake. Cognitive dissonance we covered was something in your brain when facts are saying, yeah, there's no way this could be true, but everything in your brain has been programmed to say, yeah, this is true. So you get a dissonance that just goes wah, wah, wah inside of your brain. A couple reasons for that. First reason was that was such a great time of our life, and man, we went to the moon, and the USA was awesome, and man, we just did it. We beat everybody to the moon. It was just this great time of our life and of our nation's history, and yeah, it's just inbred within us to say we went and it was great. Number 2 reason why people don't want to believe it, don't want to believe it, absolutely laugh at you if you say, I don't think we went to the moon, is because fear. Good so old funny. Fear. Because the fear is if they did lie to us about this, and if the moon landing really didn't happen as the mainstream narrative likes to tell us that it did, anything our government tells us could be a lie. And what else is a lie? From our scientific community to our educational community to our governmental agencies. If this was a lie, everything could be a lie, so we live in fear. But here's the question we also talked about. If everything within your brain, when you look at all the evidence, tells you you something is true.
I know.
Everything, all the sources around you tell you it isn't true. Do you decide that you're going to trust your own cognitive abilities and your own common sense and your own reasoning, or are you just going to deny your common sense and your common reasoning for the very fact that you are just going to go along with the mainstream story because everything else is way too hard and painful? We covered that. Debunkers. One of the things the debunkers said we covered in the last episode was that there's no way you could keep a conspiracy this big, man. You just can't do it, dude. There's thousands of people who know about it. There's no way you could have kept everybody in your little club. And we debunked that. One of the ways we debunked that was by saying that you wouldn't need to actually have thousands of people in on the conspiracy. You would only need to have a select few, or a chosen few, if you will, that are hoaxing everybody else. It's been done before. It'll be done again. Then we talked about when things don't add up, which I think I already talked about this and I'm getting ahead of myself on the notes, but we talked about when things don't add up in our own brain. Do you trust your cognitive ability or do you blindly follow the narrative? Then we also touched on this lie has to be really big. Big lies like Adolf Hitler said are the ones that people believe because it's such a big lie, how the hell could it really be fake? But then we also talked about how this lie has to have an expiration date, right? They have to have an expiration date. How long can we actually go without doing it again, or even coming close to doing it again, without people starting to ask, did we really do it? Because if we did it back in the 1969, 1970s, and we can't do it now, and we have problems doing it now, what's the deal here? Something's not adding up. Then we also ran down how the Russians were kicking our ass. The Russians were kicking our ass when it came to space, when it came to the space program.
Handily.
And we listed out all the points. I'm not going to list out all the points. If you want to hear all the points, go back and watch the first episode. Maybe I'll do a clips of the first episode so you don't have to watch the whole first episode because it was an hour. But the Russians, take my word for it, were kicking our ass. And up until the point we did the first Apollo mission, we were trailing the Russians. And then, poof, magically, all of a sudden, the Russians just didn't even try anymore. They just gave it up. They didn't even have any desire to go to the moon once we went to the moon. No one else has ever gone. Not even came close. We touched on that. We touched on the 1960s technology that we had that allegedly put us on the moon. And we compared that against what our technology is now, and how now we say we still have to jump over some technological hurdles to get back to the moon. 1960s we could do it, but now we have to clear some stuff up.
Anybody checking in right now? We're just doing a recap at 1.5 speed. It's like me on meth. We're doing an SJG on meth recap of episode number 1 of Wagging the MoonDoggie, and then we're going to jump into episode number 2. So stick around. It's going to be a good time.
60s, technology of a toaster. Today, technology of let me switch it around, smartphone, a supercomputer in the palm of our hand. These, we all have them, just a phone in our hands. Think about what NASA has. And NASA still says they have technological problems on getting back to the moon. Moving on. It wasn't as too expensive. That's another.
And by the way, did you guys just read the new article that just came out that they've scrapped the 2024 making it back to the moon? They decided, no, we can't do that. We'll put it off down the road, but we can't do that right now. It's too much going on, or it's too hard to do that. So, but we can go to Mars. That should be my next one. But we went to Mars. And the beautiful part about us saying that we went to Mars is the only control source that we can judge whether or not we went to Mars is NASA, who's telling us we went to Mars. But nobody else. We can't. How are we going to check that out, right? There's no way to check that out. I just find it hilarious, man. Oh, man. Anyways, moving on.
Other reason people say, well, we don't go back to the moon because it's too expensive. And hey, we learned everything we need to learn from the moon. Because if we went to Earth 6 times from some other some other planet, or some other Martian aliens came to us, I'll do that. Some other Martian aliens came to us, right? And they were here, and they came 6 times, and they landed on the Earth. They learned everything they needed to learn about the Earth, right? Interesting. Farthest we've ever gone away from the Earth since going to the moon, which the moon is 234,000 miles away. The farthest we've ever gone away from the Earth is roughly 400 miles away from the Earth. And the medium average of what we've actually done, most of our space travel, most of our space exploration with the space shuttle program, yada yada, the space station, so on and so forth, is roughly 200 to 300 miles away from the Earth. And the moon is 234,000 miles away from the Earth one way. That's a one-way ticket, just one way. One way is 234,000 miles. And since then, since the 1960s, the farthest we've gotten away from the Earth is 400 miles. Touched on that. We talked about the glitchy video, man. Back in the 1990s, man, it was hard to get a video without glitching when we were trying to stream our fear. What was it? Fear. What was it? When we bombed the shit out of Iraq and we were filming that, we had glitchy video right then. But in the 1969, 1970, we had video that was streamed 234,000 miles from the moon to the Earth, and there wasn't so much as glitch in it. Now you say, well, the video I watched was really grainy. Well, we also brought that up because actually nobody has ever seen, which we touched in the first episode, nobody has ever actually watched the original footage. All of the footage that you watch, that you see, that you YouTube was a reshot footage, meaning they had the technology to shoot back a video stream from the moon to NASA so we could watch them walk on the moon live. They had the technology to do that, but they couldn't figure out how to actually take that live footage that was coming in, plug it into whatever boxes they needed to, and then stream it out to the rest of the world live. So how they did it, and what you have seen, and I have seen, and everybody's seen, is they played the footage on a little black and white monitor. I don't know how big it was, probably yay by yay, whatever. And then they refilmed it with a video camera. You know how you do it? I guess it would be like this. Refilmed it with a video camera. Of course, it wasn't a roll like this where they had actually roll. We were a few years past actually having to do this to videotape something, so they just videotaped that and then shot that out live to everybody. Nobody's seen the live footage, and the reason nobody's seen the live footage, and now nobody can see the live footage, which we touched in the first episode, is because all footage has been lost. All data has been lost.
I should probably do all of these like this because we just get it all out. We don't have to sit through a 45-minute me reading the whole damn article because this is pretty informative. It's true. Moving on.
All telemetry data has been lost. All biomedical records have been lost. Everything has been lost. We also touched on the fact that the only cool things the astronauts did when they were on the moon was drive a dune buggy around and hit a golf ball. That's it. They're in 1/6 gravity of Earth, and all they wanted to do was drive a dune buggy around, which would have been cool, which we'll get into the next episode, which we're going to get into today. The next episode of how the hell did they get a dune buggy to the moon? But all they did was drive a dune buggy and hit a golf ball. Seems a little weird. So taking all this into account, we have no way to verify the following. The 1960s.
I cracked myself up, man.
To get there. We have no way to verify the physical data that made it possible for us to get there. We have no way to verify the fuel consumption that made it possible for us to get there. And we have no way to verify the footage proving it was possible that we were there. Because it's all been lost. Gone. Bye-bye. So coming up in this next episode, we're going to start it off with the moon rocks. Stay tuned. We're coming at you right now.
Okay, so that was the recap. That was SJG on meth, recapping our first episode, Wagging the MoonDoggie. So we are going to jump into episode number two. And that was the recap, article, discussion window. That one's there. I can do that discussion window, this discussion window, either one. As you'll see behind me playing on my beautiful green screen is I have some footage of actual footage from our from the moon that we we shot God knows where. But I have that playing in the background, even though my big ugly nog will be in the way of it most of the time. But just as a little background, again, to set us in the mood. But without further ado, so I don't have to edit this down too much, let's jump in. I don't know how many people will be here. We have barely anybody right now. But you know what? It's not the quantity of the people. It's the quality of the people watching. And the quality of the people watching, I bet you it's Leasy Peasy over on D-Live right now. Could be wrong, but I bet you it is. I got one person over there. It's the quality of the people that matters, not the quantity. And there's some good quality here right now. I can feel it. Okay, so let's jump in, guys. Let's jump in. Booyah! Okay. I had all this pre-recorded for those of you who weren't here prior. I'm trying to talk as fast as I was at the 1.1 times speed, and I can do it really quick. Anyways, I had all this pre-recorded, but the audio was all screwed up, and I didn't know it till after I listened to it. So I'm going to do it live with you right now. Here we go. I had a good program that I was going to work on tonight or do tonight, but I need to work out some of the kinks of it and some of the research on it. And I didn't want to do that one and be fluttering around. But this one, I figured, hell, we can just do this one. We don't have to worry about getting censored. Well, we might. I don't know. YouTube might end up taking me down. But Wagging the MoonDoggie, Part 2 by David McGowan. He wrote this on October 1st, 2009. Buckle up. It's going to be fun. Well, you now say, what about all those cool moon rocks? How did we get those? The moon is, you know, the only source of moon rocks, so doesn't that prove that we went there? No, as a matter of fact, it does not prove that we were there. And as odd as it may sound, the moon is not the only source of moon rocks. As it turns out, authentic moon rocks are available right here on the Earth, in the form of lunar meteorites. Because the moon rocks lack a protective atmosphere, or because the moon lacks a protective atmosphere, you see, it gets smacked around an awful bit, which is why it is heavily cratered. And when things smash into it to form those craters, lots of bits and pieces of the moon fly off into space. Some of them end up right here on Earth. By far, the best place to find these is Antarctica, where they are the most plentiful and, due to the terrain, are relatively easy to find and well preserved. And that is why it is curious that Antarctica just happens to be where a team of Apollo scientists led by Werner von Braun, our Nazi scientist brought over here in Operation Paperclip, ventured off to in the summer of 1967, 2 years before Apollo 11 blasted off. You would think that with the whole demanding task of perfecting the hugely complex Saturn V rockets, von Braun and his cronies at the NASA would have had their hands full. But apparently there was something even more important for them to do down in Antarctica. NASA has never offered much of an explanation for the curiously timed expedition. Some skeptics have said that it is possible that moon rocks could have been gathered from the moon with robotic probes. But while it isn't being argued here that unmanned aircraft or unmanned craft haven't reached the moon, it seems virtually inconceivable that any unmanned spacecraft could have landed on the moon and then brought back from the surface of the moon in the 1960s or 70s. But there is no indication that it can even, because there's no indication it can be done today. It's been more than 3 decades since anyone has claimed to do it, and that claim by the Soviets is highly suspect. Now, side note, this was back in 2009. I am not arguing that we have not sent a probe up to the moon at this point in relative recent history. Let's say the last 20 years. I would say that that's very possible. We probably could have managed that. Back in the 1960s or 70s, I do not think that is possible to do that. But if anything was possible, it would have been okay. Maybe an unmanned, maybe. I say no. If I had to choose a bullet, or if I had to make a choice and my life depended on it, I would still say no. We didn't do it. But that's not what's being argued here. So maybe the possibility is that an unmanned aircraft could have been in rocks back, but a man, moving on. What is known for sure is that even some of the debunking websites have, albeit reluctantly, acknowledged that meteorite samples gathered from Antarctica are virtually indistinguishable from NASA's collection of moon rocks. Now, there is a debunking site that goes out there that says every single asteroid rock that we've ever had has a crust on it from coming through the atmosphere, a burned crust, if you will, right? So all of the rocks that allegedly we brought back, which we're going to get into, aren't very many that we can even verify this anymore, but none of those have that crust on them. So that proves they aren't asteroids or meteorites that hit. That's how they debunk this moon. That's how they say they debunk the debunkers, or they debunk the hoaxers. Here's an interesting thing. They claim that every single moon rock that we have is encased in perspex. Essentially what that is, it's a classic or a plastic clear coating. And they say that all the moon rocks that we have now have all been encased in this perspex, right? Which is a plastic coating. Well, my question is, why would we have to do that to all of them? Why wouldn't we want to leave them to be actually so they could be tested and they could be, geologists and so on and so forth could really truly get their hands on them and inspect them? Because all the ones we have now are basically, it's like, like in the, what am I talking about here? Jurassic Park, or there was that one where the mosquito was stuck in the maple and they had to drill down into it to get a sample of it or whatever. All of the rocks we have essentially are in those like clear plastic encased in a clear plastic bubble, hard plastic bubble. I find that interesting. I ran across this when I was doing some, work or checking into this. But anyways, that'll come into play in a little bit. So maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself. What is known for sure is that some of the debunking websites have, albeit reluctantly, acknowledged that meteorite samples gathered from Antarctica are virtually indistinguishable from NASA collection moon rocks. Of course, as very recently learned, that is not true of all of the NASA moon rocks. Some of them apparently bear no resemblance at all to lunar meteorites. Instead, they look an awful lot like petrified wood from the Arizona desert. Enter exhibit number A. Such was the case with a moon rock that the Dutch National Museum has carefully been safeguarding for years now, before discovering in August of 2009 that they were in reality the proud owners of the most overinsured piece of petrified wood on the planet. The moon rock had been a gift from the Dutch, or had been a gift to the Dutch from the U.S. State Department, and its authenticity had reportedly been verified through a phone call to NASA. I'm guessing that NASA was probably running low on meteorite fragments and figured the Dutch wouldn't know the difference anyways. Or, interesting point, maybe Washington was a little peeved over the fact that the Dutch newspaper reportedly called NASA's bluff at the time of the first alleged moon landing. Maybe they had a beef with them and they wanted to give them some fake shit. This is not to suggest, of course, that all of the moon rocks passed out by NASA and the State Department are obvious fakes. Most, presumably, are of lunar origin. But that doesn't necessarily mean they all were gathered by American astronauts walking on the surface of the moon. They could just as easily have come to Earth as meteorites. It is also possible that they are of otherworldly origin, but not from the moon at all, such as meteorites from other sources that have been collected here on Earth. The only way to know for sure what NASA's moon rocks are, of course, would be to compare them to a control rock. That is known to be from the moon. I will side note this right now with the control video that we have just gotten from Mars, from the Mars rover that just landed and is now taking videotapes. How do we know that that's actually Mars and that video is coming from Mars when NASA's the only one claiming it's from Mars. And it's very effing clear when we really dig into by the end of the series that, God, to really truly think that we went to the moon, you got to be a special kind of naive. The problem, alas, is that the only known source of the authenticated moon rocks is NASA, the very same folks who are known to occasionally hand out chunks of petrified wood. The other problem, it turns out, is that most of the moon rocks are, you guessed it, missing. They seem to have a theme running here. Since the discovery of the fake moon rocks in the Dutch museum, debunkers have claimed that the fact that no other moon rocks have been declared fake proves that the Dutch case is an isolated one. They come out and they said, well, hey, all these archaeologists could have checked all the other rocks, and since all the other rocks, nobody's ever said that they are fake, that proves right there that they're real. After that announcement, goes the argument, wouldn't every other country in possession of a moon rock have rushed to have them authenticated? And since no other country has made a similar announcement, doesn't that prove that the moon rocks are real? And I don't know if he touches on this, but the thought that comes to my mind is, well, not necessarily. You wouldn't want to piss off NASA and the U.S. government if you went and you told their dirty little secret. You'd probably want to keep that hush-hush into yourself. Otherwise, you'd find yourself on the bad end of a PR campaign. At first glance, that would appear to be a valid argument. The problem, however, is that the vast majority of those countries can't test their moon rocks because, shockingly enough, no one knows where they are. As the Associated Press reported on September 13, 2009, nearly 270 rocks scooped up by the U.S. astronauts were given to foreign countries by the Nixon administration. Of the 135 from the Apollo 17 mission given away to nations or their leaders, only about 25 of them have been located by CollectSpace.com, a website for space history buffs that has long attempted to compile a list. The outlook for tracking the estimated 134 Apollo 11 rocks is even bleaker. The location of fewer than a dozen of those is known. So they bring back 134 rocks, and we know where less than a dozen of them are. So those less than dozens are probably being guarded pretty heavily and are not going to be able to be tested to show everyone that they truly are or aren't from the moon. It appears then that having a control rock wouldn't really be much help after all. Lost everyone. Probably just got rational still here. It appears then that having a control rock wouldn't really help that much at all, since nearly 90% of the alleged moon rocks that we want to test don't seem to be around anymore. But I've also heard, say the photos have taken, I don't know why I can't read that, but I have also heard, say the photos have been taken of the equipment left behind by the Apollo astronauts on the surface of the moon, like the descent stage of the lunar modules. How do you account for that? This is so crazy to me, because with our, and he's going to touch on this, but with our technology of our telescopes, with our ability to be able to zoom down on a gnat's ass from space, not quite, but you know what I'm saying. Why in the F and F can we not get high resolution, clear photos of what is up on the moon or not on the moon? Why do we have these grainy, shitty looking, Photoshop looking photos from lunar modules, the LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, that was 1,500 feet or 1,500 meters above the lunar surface? I think it was even closer than that. I think at one time it was 1,500 feet. It was that close to the lunar surface when it was orbiting. And yet we can't get closer pictures than the ones I'm about to show you. Come on, man. And I'll take a break here in a second, and I'll look at you guys' what you guys have to say in the chats. But I want to try to keep this going as much as I can, and I'm already screwing that up. So carrying on. Okay. But I've also heard you say, the photos taken on the lunar. Okay, so it is certainly true that there have been numerous claims over the years that various satellites or unmanned space probes or space telescopes were going to capture images that would definitively prove that man walked on the moon, thus settling the controversy once and for all. And in recent years, the debunkers have openly gloated whenever such an announcement has been made, boldly proclaiming that all the hoax believers will soon be exposed as the ignorant buffoons that we are. Despite all the promises, however, no such images have ever been produced. A fact that the debunkers seem to conveniently overlook while forever rushing, to announce that the hoax theories are about to be discredited. For at least 2 decades now, since the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope, we've been promised dazzling images of the lunar modules sitting on the surface of the moon. The Hubble technology, needless to say, never managed to deliver that. More recently, in 2002, the European Southern Observatory Very Large Telescope, whose inventor apparently coined the name while watching Sesame Street, was also supposed to deliver the promised images. And 7 years later, the fabled images have yet to materialize. In March 2005, Space.com boldly announced that a European spacecraft now orbiting the moon could turn out to be a time machine of sorts, as photographs of old landing sites of Soviet robotic probes and the areas where the American Apollo crews set down and explored. New imagery of old Apollo touchdown spots from the European Space Agency's Smart 1 probe might put to rest conspiratorial thoughts that the U.S. astronauts didn't go the distance and scuff up the lunar landscape. NASA carried out 6 piloted landings on the moon in the period of 1969 to 1972. Fringe theorists have said that NASA never really went to the moon. This is all according to Space.com. We're the fringe theorists. I am. I'm the cuckoo. I'm the tinfoil hat guy. Proud of it, too. I'm guessing that most fringe theorists will continue to harbor conspiratorial thoughts for as long as its pompous websites like Space.com continue making arrogant proclamations such as that, and then not following them up with so much as a single image in well over 4 years. Who knew, by the way, that the European Space Agency had the technology and the budget to send a spacecraft off to orbit the moon? Who knew that the Europeans even had a space agency? I wonder, given that they obviously have the technology to send spacecraft to the moon, why say they haven't manned a mission there? I would think it would be fairly easy to send some guys to at least orbit the moon, right? If we can send a pod there to orbit around and take pictures, I mean, how hard would it be to put a couple seats in there and take some pictures of the moon, or put some people up there to orbit it? We haven't done it, though. Isn't that weird? I think it's weird. Here's another thing I sometimes wonder about. Why it is that in the 1960s we possessed Babas and the Heba de Hubers. Why is it that in the 1960s we possessed the advanced technology required to actually land men on the moon? But in the 21st century, we don't even have that technology required to get an unmanned craft close enough to the moon to take usable photographs. Or could it be that there's nothing there to photograph? Moving on. Just this year, NASA itself boldly announced that its Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, the LRO, has returned its first imagery of the Apollo moon landing site. So we're about ready to see with our own eyes that we're just a bunch of dummies, hoaxing dummies. Wait till you see these photos. The pictures show the Apollo mission's lunar module descent stage sitting on the moon's surface so clearly. As long shadows from a low sun angle make the module's locations evident. The LROC team anxiously awaited each image, said the LROC principal investigator Mark Robinson of Arizona State University. We were very interested in getting our first peek at the lunar module descent stages, just for the thrill, and to see how well the cameras had come into focus. Indeed, the images are fantastic, and so is the focus. Sounds promising. The images, however, hardly live up to the billing. They are, in fact, completely worthless. All they depict are tiny white dots on the lunar surface that could be just about anything, and that would barely be visible at all without those handy long shadows from a low sun angle. And the weird thing about those shadows is that in the very same NASA article, it says that because the sun was so low to the horizon when the images were made, even subtle variations in the topography create long shadows. And while it is perfectly obvious that there are more than just subtle variations in the lunar topography in the images, the alleged lunar modules are the only thing casting long shadows. So here we go, guys. Here are those pictures from the LRO that prove, without a shadow of a doubt, right there, they prove without a shadow, you probably can't see it there very clearly. So let me go back to this one to show you where it is. See right there? That is it, right there. Clear pictures, Conspiracy theorists be damned. The story's done, over with. We went to the moon. We can prove it. Look at that picture. Pretty amazing. If we, even if we give NASA every benefit of the doubt and assume that the images have not been amateurishly photoshopped, and that the indiscernible white dots are indeed something of man-made origin, the most likely culprit would be those Soviet robotic probes mentioned by Space.com, which presumably did land on the moon. A number of those probes, which were part of the Apollo-era Luna program, were very similar in size and shape to the lunar modules. Certainly enough so that images of such high resolution would be required to make definitive judgment. That's what they say was the probe back then too. That's the phallic-y looking, penis-y looking Soviet probe that orbited the moon. Actually, after studying the image above of the alleged lunar probes, I'm going to have to say the Soviets were lying their asses off almost as much as NASA was. There is no way I'm going to buy into the notion that the Soviets sent a free-form abstract sculpture, which appears to have been constructed by Fred Sanford and Granny Clampett, on a 234,000-mile journey from the Earth to the moon. Carefully studied the central area of the photograph, however, does reveal why the spacecraft is known as probes. I wonder if they were capable of performing docking maneuvers. You know what I mean? That's funny. Good one. Good one, David. That's funny. According to NASA, Japan and India have also sent unmanned orbiting spacecraft to the moon in recent years, as has China. As with the SEA and NASA's orbiters, they too have failed to return. Yeah, I want to see something here if I did that. If it pulls up all. Yeah, it does. Oh, there we go. I knew I had already done this once. Son of a bitch. They have failed to return any of the images, artifacts left behind on the moon. Thought here. So yeah, we've had no good images from any country who've all sent lunar modules up there to orbit the moon, and we've had no good pictures. Website, exactly, Liesel. Photographs are as good as Bigfoot's. Exactly. If the hoax debunking websites are to be believed, by the way, the reason that no one has returned to the moon in 37 years is because we pretty much already, and now 51 years, because we pretty much have already tapped that celestial body for all the information it had to offer. There's really, you see nothing much left there. And he's going to get into this in a second, but think about that in the reverse. If we went to the Earth 6 times, from space, we came to the Earth and visited the Earth 6 times. Would we think in 6 times we got all the information we needed from the Earth and never need to go back there? Of course not. Now, I know the moon is not the Earth. There's less there. But do we really think we got all the information we ever would need to obtain from the moon? And we never need to go back, especially now when people are trying to get back to the moon so hard, but now we just magically can't do it anymore. But now we really want to get back there because they're saying there might be water up there. There could be this, there could be that. And we want to really figure out what's going on. But we can't. But we did it 6 times perfectly within 6 months of each other, back to back to back to back to back. Flawlessly? Come on, man. I should have like a little emoji that just pops up. Come on, man. Have it be Biden. That'd be funny. A debunking article posted in abcnews.com, for example, quoted Val Jimin, the president of the Central Missouri Astronomical Association, as saying, "There's no reason to go back. Quite frankly, the moon is just a giant parking lot. There's just not much there." I wonder why it is then that just about everyone seems to want to send unmanned probes there or to train enormously powerful telescopes on the moon's surface. What could they possibly learn about the parking lot from those distances that our astronauts didn't already discover by actually being there? Some true believers also claim that what was dubbed the Lunar Laser Ranging Experiment also proves that we really went to the moon. Okay, that's this little doohickey right here that says we bounced lasers off of the moon, right? Okay, let's debunk that mofo. As the story goes, the astronauts on Apollo 11, Apollo 14, and Apollo 15 all allegedly left small laser targets sitting on the lunar terrain. One of them can be seen in the official NASA photograph reproduced below. So the scientists back home could then bounce lasers off of the target to precisely gauge the distance from the Earth to the moon. According to the debunkers, the fact that the observatories to this day bounce lasers off the alleged targets proves that the Apollo mission succeeded. It is perfectly obvious, though, that the targets, if even there, could have been placed robotically, most likely by the Soviets. It's also possible that there are no laser targets on the moon. In December of 1966, National Geographic, say that again, in December 1966, National Geographic reported that scientists at MIT had been achieving essentially the same result for 4 years by bouncing a laser off the surface of the moon. The New York Times added that the Soviets had been doing the same thing since at least 1963. So, see, we don't need anything up there to bounce it off of, is what they're saying. There was much about the Apollo flights that was truly miraculous, but arguably the greatest technological achievement was the design of the lunar module. This one's beautiful, guys. Has anyone, by the way, ever really taken a good look at those contraptions? I mean, a detailed up-close look? I'm guessing that the vast majority of people have not. But luckily, we can quickly remedy that situation because I happen to have some really good high-resolution images that come directly from the good people at NASA. Let's look at that bad mambo jumbo. There she is, man. That is a good-looking space-worthy craft right there. Tinfoil and wrapping paper and sheet metal riveted together. It's even the gaps. You can see gaps from right here. Like, what the hell? I mean, that literally looks like that is Reynolds aluminum foil. God dang it. I can't believe people believe this shit. Look at it there. Look at it and look, man. That's beautiful. That is a space-worthy piece of machinery right there. While what is depicted in the images may initially appear to be, to the untrained eye, to be some kind of a mock-up that someone cobbled together in their backyard to make fun of NASA, I can assure you that that is actually an extremely high-tech manned spacecraft capable of landing on the surface of the moon. And incredibly enough, it was also capable of blasting off of the moon and flying 69 miles back up into the lunar orbit. That thing right there, bouncing, flying up off 69, 70 miles straight up. And then at 4,000 miles an hour, redocking with the lunar orbiter. Though not immediately apparent, it is actually a two-stage aircraft. The lower half, the part that looks like a tubular aluminum framework covered with mylar and old Christmas wrapping paper, being the descent stage, and the upper half, the part that looks as though it was cobbled together from an old air conditioning ductwork and is primarily held together, as can be seen in the up close, with zippers and golden tape, being the ascent stage right here. That's the ascent stage right there, that little blaster McBlasty a lot down here, right? And down up over here, these are just the legs. And then up over here, you have some that you can't see them kind of up in here. That was for the descent stage. The upper half, of course, is the more sophisticated portion, being capable of lifting off and flying with enough power to break free of Moon's gravity and reach lunar orbit. It also, of course, possessed sophisticated enough navigational capabilities for it to locate, literally out of the middle of effing nowhere, the command module that it had to dock with in order to get the astronauts safely back to Earth. It also had to catch that command module, which was orbiting the moon at a leisurely 4,000 miles per hour. And this thing caught it right here. That bad mambo jumbo caught it. Make it a little smaller so we can see that better. That bad mambo jumbo caught it. These guys here walking behind us, as you can see in my little screen there, they rode in that bad boy. But we'll get to all that a little later. I think we can agree for now that such a sleek, stylish, well-designed craft would have no problem flying with that kind of power, precision, and stability. There is one thing that appears to be a problem, though. How did they get everything on board the module that they were going to need to successfully complete their missions? It's a good question, right? According to NASA, the modules were, excluding the landing pads, only about 12 feet in diameter. That is obviously not a whole lot of space to work with, so let's try to think of everything that we would need if we were the astronauts venturing off into a little journey to the moon. Remember, that is a 12-foot in diameter craft. 12 feet in diameter. So let's jump into this part here. We're almost done too, so stick around. Oh, we're going to talk about Mars. Oh, yeah. I'm glad we just have a quaint group tonight. People are probably getting sick of me recovering these stories here, but I'm going to jump into some uncharted territories that we haven't heard yet. I just wanted to make sure we get all these back, kind of recapped. Okay, moving on. First of all, of course, we have to account for the space taken up by the various components of the ship itself. There is the framework and let's call it the fuselage of the craft, and we'll need a lot of sophisticated navigation and guidance, communication equipment, all of which took up a whole lot more space back in the 60s than it would today. And then, needless to say, there is the power supply, or rather multiple power supplies. For the descent stage, there's also the reverse thrust rockets, and then that allegedly allowed the spacecraft to make a soft landing on the moon. And then for the ascent stage, there's a powerful rocket to propel it, the random bundle of sheet metal into the lunar orbit. There's also additional rockets to allegedly stabilize the vessel in flight, the random clusters of what look like bicycle horns. Right here, these are your RCS thrusters, right? Back here on the sides. So you got your little area there where they'd sit. You got your fuel cell. You got your water. You know, they don't have a pooper in there, which you'd think they're going to need, right? If they're going to be up there for so long. We're going to cover that in a little while. But I don't know where their pooper's at. And then that's all going to be totally sealed and airtight. And they're going to be 3 days on the moon. So, man, that's going to be tough. I just spent 3 days without electricity, and that was some tough crap, man. We're down here on Earth in the 2020s, too. Next up is the massive amount of fuel that will be required to power all of those rockets for both the ascent and descent stages of the mission. The ascent stage the ascent stage in particular is going to be a bit of a fuel hog. Ascending 69 miles and breaking free of Moon's gravity is a formidable challenge, to say the least. Though it may only have 1/6 the gravitational pull of Earth, keep in mind that it's still strong enough force to keep the tides here on Earth 234,000 miles away. So even though it's only 1/6 of the gravity, it's still a lot of gravity to push something that heavy that far up into space. Or up into the atmosphere. Whatever. There's no atmosphere. Back up into redocking. You know what I mean. I'm not a rocket scientist, by the way, and so I'm sure there are quite a few components that I'm leaving off my lunar module. But that's okay, because our spaceship is already starting to feel pretty cramped just with the stuff listed so far, and we're just getting started. Next, we have to include everything required to keep ourselves alive and well. We aren't going to be very long, of course, and the space is obviously limited, but we'll still require some sort of basic amenities. We will, after all, have to sleep somewhere in the ship, won't we? And or will we just unfold lunar cots and take a nap on the surface? We'll also require a sanitation and a septic system of some kind. Or did those missions bring about another first for the NASA that has been reluctant to brag about? Was Neil Armstrong, unbeknownst to the American people, the first man to take a dump on the lunar surface? Or was it Buzz Aldrin? Which astronaut has the distinction of being the first to soil the lunar landscape? Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, getting back to our packing list. In addition to sanitation system, it is imperative that we bring along an adequate supply of food, water, and oxygen. And not just enough to last for the planned duration of our visit, but enough to supply a small safety cushion should anything go wrong. Because from what I've heard, running out of food, water, or oxygen while on the moon can really F up an otherwise perfectly good trip. The oxygen is especially important, so we're going to need really good, reliable system to deliver that oxygen and to, recharge the oxygen tanks in our spacesuits, so we can walk around on the moon and jump like 8 or 9 inches high, like the Apollo guys did. And a backup oxygen system probably wouldn't be a bad idea. We're also going to need to install a top-of-the-line heating and cooling system, probably several of them, actually, because the weather on the moon, so to speak, can be a bit unpleasant. According to the experts over at NASA, daytime highs average a balmy 260 degrees Fahrenheit, but it cools off quite a bit at night, dropping an average of negative 280 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're looking for anything between those two extremes, you won't really find it on the moon. It's pretty much one or the other. If you're in the sun, you're going to boil alive, and if you're out of the sun, you're going to be flash frozen. I'm not at all sure how the air conditioning system is going to work, come to think of it, since air conditioning requires a steady supply of, please stop me if you've heard this, air. And the moon doesn't really have a lot of that. It would help, of course, if our spacecraft was heavily insulated in some manner. But that doesn't appear to be the case. So we need a really, really good heating and cooling system and plenty of Freon or whatever it is that we'll need to keep this system running. I'm going to look up on this one too, because I did a little search on this a while back of the system, the air conditioning type system that they used up there, because since it doesn't have an atmosphere or air, there was something I read at one time, this crazy system that they say works. I don't know. I'd have to. I'll do a little side note on that at some time. But so now we have to add all of the following to our already crowded space: ourselves, a minimal amount of room to sleep, and otherwise to take care of our basic necessities, some type of plumbing and sewage system, a really good heating and cooling system, a considerable supply of food and water and oxygen, and we're still not done packing for our trip. Now we have to add up all the equipment that will be required to maintain the ship and complete our planned mission. First of all, we are definitely going to need a pack of exhaustive supply of spare parts and a wide variety of tools. That is an absolute must. From what I've heard, there are few stores on the moon that do stock spaceship parts, but they tend to close on certain days of the week, and orders from the mainland can take a frustratingly long time to arrive, so it's always best to be prepared for an emergency ahead of time. There are a lot of things that can also go wrong with our spaceship, and the only thing harder than finding a good mechanic here on Earth is finding one on the moon. And of course, we're going to have to bring all that fancy testing equipment that we'll use to pretend to conduct experiments. So some of it is quite bulky, so we'll need to set aside some storage space for all of that. And we're going to need some additional storage space to bring back all those petrified wood samples, but we should have room for that after we jettison most of the fake testing equipment. Our spaceship is now ridiculously overloaded that we may have to add a roof rack, and we still aren't done yet. We still have a couple more items to pack, and we probably should have gotten them on sooner because they're going to take up quite a lot of space. Since this is one of the later Apollo flights you see, we also have to pack on a dune buggy, otherwise known as a lunar rover. And the rovers, according to NASA, are a full 10 feet long, just 2 feet less than the diameter of our craft. But don't worry, according to NASA, the rovers, pictured below, folded up to the size of a large suitcase. Even when released, they would just sort of magically unfold, snap into place, and they're ready to go roam the lunar terrain. That bad mambo jumbo right there. It's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. Doohickey. You're right, Arcadia. The doohickey. Photos are just as accurate as Bigfoot. Maybe even a little satellite jolted out is missing from our reality. Maybe yeah, I think they are, Liesel. No joke. Hence have we gone to the moon? Allegedly 6. 6 times, allegedly. Okay. To be perfectly honest, I'm not really sure why we've gone there 7 times. We've been on the moon allegedly 6 times. To be perfectly honest, I'm not really sure why we have to pack the damn rover. There's no real compelling reason to take it to the moon except for the fact that it makes really good TV. And that seems to be of paramount importance. And as can be seen from below, it should easily fit into their spacecraft. Oh, geez. This is just so hard for the brain to process. One last thing we're going to need is a whole lot of batteries, lots of batteries. That's going to be the only way to power the ship while we're on the moon. And we'll definitely need to run the communication system and the oxygen supply system and the heating and the cooling system and the cabin lights and the television cameras and the transmitters and all the testing equipment and all of our space chutes and the damn rover. And we won't even be able to recharge any of those various batteries. So we're going to need a lot of backups, especially of the really big batteries that run the ship. We may need separate ship just to carry all the batteries we're going to need. Now, I don't know on that. I'd have to do some research whether or not they had any kind of solar recharging abilities at that time, which that could be a offset, or that could be what a debunker would bring up. I don't know. I haven't done the research on that. I don't think we did, though, at that time. By the way, I can't possibly be the only one who is disappointed that we have never followed up on that breakthrough folding vehicle technology. If we had the folding moon buggies back in the 1970s, then how far behind could folding old automobiles have been had we chosen to stay the course? Had NASA pioneering vision been followed up, we could all be folding up our cars and tucking them away under our office desks. But as all this Apollo technology, it existed only in that specific period of time and has now sadly been lost to the ages. NASA has done something very odd, by the way, with the lunar modules that it has on display for museum visitors to marvel at. It has staffed it with miniature astronauts wearing miniature spacesuits. The module may also be scaled slightly larger than the real modules that allegedly landed on the moon. I wonder why they would do that. I'm pretty sure that Buzz and Neil were of normal stature, so the only reason that I can think of that they would use miniature astronauts would be to portray the modules as larger than they actually were, and in better condition too. Did they pick up the ones they sent to the moon at the used car lot? There's the miniature astronauts with the slightly larger module. Before moving on, I need to emphasize here just how sophisticated the lunar modules actually were. These remarkable spacecraft, and I understandably get a little choked up talking about this because I'm just so damn proud of our Nazi scientists, Operation Paperclip, managed to make 6 perfect takeoffs from the surface of the moon. And understand here, people, that they did that amazingly enough with completely untested technology. Especially on the first one. They landed and took off perfectly. You can't duplicate the conditions of the moon here at home, you see, or even provide a rough approximation. And since no one had ever been to the moon, they didn't know exactly what to replicate anyways. So this part of the mission was pretty much a crapshoot. Conditions on the moon are, to say the least, a bit different than here on Earth. The gravitational pull is only about 1/6 of what it is here. And then there is that whole lack of atmosphere thing and the decidedly unearthly temperatures. And then, of course, there are the high levels of space radiation. I'm quite sure that we had the best minds available working on the Apollo project, but none of them could have accurately predicted and compensated for how all those unearthly conditions would combine to affect the flight potential of the lunar modules. So the ability of modules to actually blast off of the moon and fly, at best, was a theoretical concept. Now, understanding that here on Earth, we got much more gravity and so on and so forth. But look what it takes, man, to launch here on Earth. The Saturn V rocket to get out away from Earth's atmosphere, right? It's pretty damn complex. But we're going to believe that the astronauts, when they were blasting off, just jumped in, set the coordinates, and popped off of the moon on that bad boy right there. Come on, man. It's also important to remember that unlike the initial blast-off of the Earth seen above, which involved the collective efforts of thousands of people and the use of all types of peripheral equipment, the astronauts taken off the moon had only themselves and a strange vessel that looked like it had been salvaged from lost in space. And again, 1/6 gravity is still 1/6 gravity. Even a scaled-down version of the above would seemingly be needed. What would you be thinking, by the way, if you suddenly found yourself on the surface of the moon with what looked like a cheap movie prop as your only way home? Would you feel comfortable hanging around for a few days doing experiments, confident that when the time came, the untested contraption behind you would actually get you back to the moon? Or would the words bad career choice be pulsing through your mind? But as it turns out, America kicked ass back then, and those lunar modules performed like champions every single time. They didn't even need any modifications. Despite the completely foreign environment, they worked perfectly the very first time and every single time thereafter. Because we kick ass. America. On Earth, it took many long years of trial and error, many failed test flights, many unfortunate accidents, and many, many trips back to the drawing board before we could safely and reliably launch men into low Earth orbit. But on the moon, we nailed it on the very first time. See, it's those little things right there. When I think about those little things that make me think, that are major to me, that are big to me, right? Today, of course, we can't even launch a space shuttle from right here on planet Earth without occasionally blowing one up, even though we have lowered our sights considerably. After all, sending spacecraft in a low Earth orbit is considerably easier than sending spacecraft all the way to the friggin' moon and back. It would appear that then that we can draw the following conclusions. Although technology has advanced immeasurably since the Apollo moon landing, and we have significantly downgraded our goals in space, we can't come close to matching the kick-ass safety record of the Apollo days. The thing is that back in the frontier days, we didn't need all that fancy technology and that book learning to send Buzz and the boys to the moon and back. Back then, we had an American can-do spirit, and we just cowboyed up and MacGyvered those spaceships to the moon. All we needed was an old Volkswagen engine, some duct tape, and a roll of baling wire. Throw a roll of butt wipe and a little tang on board, and you're good to go, bruh. And how about the speed of which we cranked out those Apollo spacecraft? Once we figured out how to make them, we were stamping them out like Coke cans. We fired off 7 of them in just under 3.5 years, or about 1 every 6 months. Think about that. We just came out and said we can't get back to the moon in 2024 and that we're postponing that and putting that off. Now, today, with all the technology we know we have today, we can't get back to the moon right now. But in 1969 to 1972, we did it flawlessly 6 times. Come on, man. Given the extreme complexity of those vessels and the fact that every component had to perform flawlessly under largely unknown conditions, that is pretty impressive production schedule. America, I think it is safe to say, totally rocked back then. And I would say that is true too. We kicked some serious ass. Well, there I did. I cranked it out, man. I cranked out episode number 2. The next one will be pre-recorded. I'm going to get a little bit better with my editing, but I wanted to get episode number 2 up for all of you couple people that have been watching this whole time. Arcadia and Liesel, you guys rock. Everyone else has came and gone. I don't think people are appreciating my series anymore. Got to figure out how I'm going to do this so I can get people's attention a little bit better. A little better. You know what I could do for you is I think I might be able to switch scenes without stopping. Can I do that? Wanted to do something here. Is that going to... We're still streaming. Streaming. Okay. Video production. Okay, yeah. I do have them right here. Okay. So, hang on here. I know you can still hear me. Stick with me for a second. Article window, maybe? Yeah, okay. All right. So, before I go, I wanted to make sure that you guys get introduced to another friend of mine, another character that will be coming on shortly. You guys will be appreciating Janky Jackson is his name. He's a friend of mine. I asked him to come on and to just do a quick promo for me for my website. And so he said he would do that. And he's also going to be featured in some new segments that we're doing. So I thought I would run this clip that he recorded for me, and then I'll come back when it's done. So stick around.
What's up, everybody? It's Janky Jackson. You may not know who Janky Jackson is because Janky Jackson probably hasn't been officially introduced to you. But Janky Jackson is going to be doing a new segment called Janky Jackson's Reactions.
I'm such a dork.
Yes. And Janky Jackson's going to just watch some different shows, watch some different clips, and we're going to do some reactions to them because you know what? I see everybody doing these reactions. Almost said Janky Jackson reactions, but nobody could do a Janky Jackson reaction but Janky Jackson, and that's me. So we're going to do some Janky Jackson reactions, and you're not going to want to miss them. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be hilarious. But you want to know something you ain't going to want to miss? It's sjgperspective.com. Because sjgperspective.com, you can find out all the kind of stuff that's going on with SJG Perspective. A very good friend of mine, I might add. He's pretty awesome. Maybe not quite so as awesome as Janky Jackson, but come on. Can you blame him? Can you blame him? Janky Jackson's pretty awesome. And it's all right in the name, right there. Excuse me, wrong side, right there. SJG Perspective. And if you don't know where to find them, you just go to the interwebs, allegedly is what they're calling them nowadays, and you type in SJG Perspective, and it'll bring you to here, and you'll have all these fancy dancy tabs all above and everything that just take a seemingly long time to load. And then you go over here to this one where you can shop if you wanted to. You can even follow him on different spots like D-Live and Library, and Spotify, Anchor, Rumble TV. Doesn't really use Rumble ever. Parler, gotta update that because we all know what happened to Parler. Facebook, YouTube, all these Twitters and Twatters and whatnot, but especially right up here on the very top, if you can see my cursor flipping around right above the U screw tube, you have a bunch of different places where you can follow SJG Perspective. It's really great. He's got show notes. He's even got like a calendar. Or if you want to know what he's doing or who he's interviewing, he has been very terrible at updating this, but he assures me he will do better. Isn't that right, SJG? That's right, sir. That's right, Janky Jackson. All right, see what I'm saying? He's going to do better. So anyways, I would like to remind you to be on the lookout for SJG Perspective's new segment with Janky Jackson. That is me. Probably make it to the big time and have to leave that SJG behind, but until then, check him out. It's going to be awesome. But check out sjgperspective.com. And no, I didn't write the script for this. Are you kidding me? This is Janky Jackson. I'm just reacting because I'm magic like that. Till next time, it's SJG Perspective with his host. And I don't even know what you'd call me, man. Maybe I don't even know. Because like I said, I didn't script this. But tune in next time and keep an eye out for Janky Jackson reaction. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Janky Jackson. It's kind of annoying, I'm sure. I'm sure I'm going to get some hate comments, but I love me some hate comments. Fuels me up with some hate comments. Give me some juice, baby. Till next time, we'll see you there. SJG Perspective and Janky Jackson signing off.
Oh, that's my buddy Janky Jackson. So I hope you guys definitely will enjoy. You know, he can get a little annoying. I understand. He just goes off the cuff, and so that his reaction videos, Janky Jackson's reaction videos, I think should be fun. So definitely give me your thoughts on what you think when it comes to. I just now got my pop up for my saying that I was going live. It's only an hour late. Anyways, yeah, I hope that wasn't too annoying to anybody out there. But it was, I just figured like Janky Jackson, middle name's Magic, Janky Magic Jackson would be a good character, or, good, he's a character is what I meant to say. And he's a friend of mine. So bringing him on, sharing some of the, the love, whatnot here. I thought you guys could appreciate that. So, other than that, thank you guys for hanging out. I just needed to crack it open again and get back here, knock the dust off. I feel like it's hit and miss with me. We know how that is. But yeah, I had just too much going on. We lost our power, just got our power back. And, a couple days ago we did, but it was crazy up here, man. My house looks like a war zone. Had an 85-foot oak tree fall in my backyard and a 55-foot oak tree fall in my backyard. And luckily it didn't hit my house, so it was pretty good. But okay, good. I'm glad, Liesl, you appreciated it and laughed. I don't know if Arcadia is still with us or not. Maybe he is. But I think that's about it. So tomorrow I'm going to do something, and Sunday I'm going to do something. And I had a really good I had a really good show outline to do, but when I started reading it tonight, I didn't get back till about 7:30, and I wanted to do something, and I didn't have time to really prep it. So we'll dive into more of the more important stuff to talk about too. I got to start figuring out how I'm going to pull people off of YouTube and push them over to SJGC SEE. It's SJGSEE. That's my other channel. So if you guys aren't subbed there, do that. But most importantly, like Janky Jackson said, make sure you're subbed up to sjgperspective.com, because that's a place where they won't be able to cancel me. And we all know they probably want to cancel me. So whoever, Liesl is over on D-Live right now, and I'm not going to leave you hanging, Liesl. Not going to leave you hanging. I am coming over here right now, and I am going to, when it comes out, whoever, Liesl is over on D-Live right now, and I'm not going to leave you hanging, Liesl. Put some of this in here. I am coming over here right now. Yeah. And then I'm going to distribute it. So, pretty sure you're going to get it, Liesl. You're the only one there. You're the only one who cares. I've cranked it out. Has we gone to the moon? So, yeah, we've gone 6 times the moon. I saw long after burning the sky. Kind of wished it was an asteroid. There's only 7 usable spacesuits available now. Reading some of your comments there. All right. Well, I guess I don't need to worry that Liesl's going to get it, because you're the only one here. Look at that, Liesl. You got 50.4. You got them all. You got them all because you are awesome and came over and watched there. Okay, so until next time, we will sign off and get off of here. I'll do something tomorrow, but thank you guys for hanging out. I appreciate it. It's SJG Perspective. We will talk to you real soon. Have a great night, and without fear or animus, we'll talk to you later. Bye. That didn't work. There was no outro. Ending message. How come that didn't work like it was supposed to? Oh, I know why. Try it again. There we go. Woo. All right.